Welcome to the Matt and Hugh Show. I'm Hugh.
And I'm Madam.
And this is part one of Madalina's interview with Greg DiStefano, one of the owners of the Victor Cafe. Hey, I love this shirt. This is the most amazing little secret gem of Philadelphia, Italian restaurant where the waitstaff are all professional opera singers or students, and they sing during dinner. It's quite amazing.
You will hear in this first part of the interview how everything started. You will also enjoy some pictures that are there. Actually,
Yeah.
pictures cover all the walls there. Literally, there's no
Space on the walls. Yeah.
And there are great personalities, great artists that have been there.
Yeah.
And the first thing that comes to my mind is Stokowski, for instance, or Pavarotti, or Giuseppe Di Stefano, even Arthur Rubinstein. So please come there, listen to the interview, watch the interview also, and make sure to subscribe to our channel.
Yeah.
And please leave comments to what topics do you want us to present to you? What arrangements would you like us to produce?
Yeah. So anyway, hope you enjoy part one of Madalina's interview with Greg DiStefano of the Victor Cafe.
Thank you so much for accepting this invitation to answer to some of my questions. What is that makes this place so special?
Well, first, it's a pleasure to be here, and very thanks for asking. The cafe is all about classical music and opera. My brother and I are continuing the tradition started by my grandfather and continued by our father. We celebrate classical music and opera. It's performed and played during dinner, and it's what we've been doing most of our lives.
So I understood you were born in 1956.
In 56,
But
yes,
your
that's
grandfather
correct.
died 2 years before in 54.
Right.
So you never met him. You just heard stories about his business, about him. What was that like growing up, hearing all these stories, fascinating stories, and growing up in a world surrounded by opera and classical music? Did you feel like, oh, this is a big responsibility, or did you feel excited that one day you will carry this on?
Well, of course, that's a great question. Your opinion changes a lot because when we were young and it was a family-run business, we were drummed down here by our ears to get to work.
I kind of recognize that.
Yeah. So going downtown meant, oh, we got to go down to the restaurant instead of going to play with our friends. We would take the Paoli local. From Overbrook. We grew up in Overbrook and ride down and take the subway and come here and be put to work and stick around. And sometimes we had to stay till after the place was closed. And then we would go to Chinatown afterwards and get home very late at night. When we were young, it was a chore. It was a pill. And as we got older and heard the stories about the place and how it affected other people's lives, and the fact that, believe it or not, the place was world renowned, started taking it seriously and realized that it had value. It was a gem, and your instincts take over. And you want to take care of the place.
Speaking of how this place has helped many people, has influenced the lives of so many people, can you please tell us more about your grandfather discovering Mario Lanza? He was born in Philadelphia, right?
Yes.
But his name was not Mario Lanza.
No.
That was stage name.
That's
there.
correct. That's correct. His name was Alfred Kokoza. He comes from not far from here at all. We're 13th and Dickinson. I think he was in the 8th and Christian area. And I have some firsthand knowledge and I have hearsay because Grandpa never held me. I'm next to the baby. And he died in 54. As a youngster growing up, I knew nothing of all these people and hadn't seen my first opera yet, but I did hear singing going on in the cafe. When I was a child, it was the customers who sang. South Philly was predominantly Italian. They all thought they had a voice. So they would sing, they would push their plate of pasta aside and stand up and sing along with a Caruso or a Gigli or Pinza, Schipa, Donatello, Jan Pierce, Lanza, DiStefano, and while the records were played from the back room right here. Well, Grandpop had records, and not a lot of people had the records. That was what he wanted to do. So this was the place to hang out if you liked that sort of thing. And evidently, from stories I hear from my mother or the older folks, Freddie, as a lot of people called him, hung out in here with Grandpop and would listen to all the new songs, and Freddie would sing, and I heard my mother say, "Oh, Grandpop and Alfred fought like cats and dogs," and these are stories. But one of the stories was that one day, Grandpop took Freddie across the ferry to Camden.
Yeah.
After RCA had taken over the Victor Talking Machine Company.
I think it's 1929, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. RCA bought the Victor Talking Machine Company. So
right, and Grandpop said, "This is the guy you should be listening to." A demo was cut, and the next thing you know, Alfred Cuckoz's Mario Lanza. So that's what I know. And then all the way up until 1979 or 1980, I can't remember exactly, still the customers were singing. A young man walked in who was coincidentally an opera student. So he started waiting tables, and once in a while he would sing. A year later, the same thing happened. Another young man came in, and coincidentally an opera student. So it evolved into the entire floor staff are all operatically trained, and the entire floor staff sings. And we have what I like to say, all three types. We have those that are still in the vocal arts program, trying to make rent money or, whatever. Those that are finished their vocal arts program and are waiting for their big break, and they're going out on their jobs and everything. And those that are finished with their performance career, yet still want to sing. So it's a really nice mix that we have. And, it ebbs and flows. But right now we're blessed with some very beautiful voices. So whoever hears this, come on out and listen to some beautiful songs.
So, I've been here a couple times, and I could actually time that every 20 minutes or so, a bell would ring.
Approximately.
And then one of the...
to get everyone's attention.
Yeah, to get everyone's attention.
Here's what I want to know. I hope everything was enjoyable.
Excellent. Because of the pandemic, that affected everyone and everything.
Changed everything. And it was a learning experience every 2 weeks.
But I'm sure that people have started to come back. I'm very sure. And the place started to regain its reputation. And
we built a barrier for the singers to sing
right
behind.
A lot of I hate here. I sat outside. It was Professor Orkis and a bunch of students, and we all sat outside. It was nice weather to enjoy. And we would actually cut on the balcony.
On a nice day, yeah, you sat outside, and we had the singer perform from the balcony upstairs, nice and far away. And the neighbors loved it. It was really, a lot of neighbors came by and says, "Oh, it's so European."
I would say that, listening to you describing how this whole singing tradition by staff started, so in 1979, I was thinking that this place actually revives old traditions, European traditions, because we're having big stages like Metropolitan Opera. We had small rooms where people would gather together, have great meal, enjoying drinks, and having artists performing for them, entertaining them. entertaining each other, discussing with each other, discussing arts, literature, hearing new recordings, newly released recordings, or newly released, operas or pieces of music. And I think that's human interaction. That's real human interaction. So what you do here, I believe it's the same thing.
It's so nice to hear you say these things, because that's sort of our hope, that this is a formula that works. And even in the worst of times, people still want to be entertained. And
Especially in the worst of times.
And even in the worst of times, they still need to eat. I think a lot of the history of this place, and the natural evolution that it took to get to where we are is part of the magic of this place. So many things were not done by design; they were just allowed to happen.
So, speaking of that, can you actually walk us through the history of this place? So originally it was across the street, right?
And some of the oldest customers tell me that there was a music shop on 13th Street. I can't speak to this. That part of the history is getting a little fuzzy, but I've heard it from more than one source. So I'm wondering. And, one of my older sisters mentioned it once as well. But there's pictures on the wall. We were across the street. Grandpa originally started selling Victrolas and records. That was it. The pictures on the wall that we have across the street, some actually say washing machines as well.
Refrigerator.
Right. And he got into a lot of things. I remember just recently someone came and gave us a picture of the front of the building taken way back in like 1932 or something. And there was a huge sign that said "Drink Funweiser." So we have that somewhere. But we were across the street, and I remember as a child that the windows were soaped up. If you remember what that looks like, in the old days when they closed a business, they would soap up the windows. So Uncle Armand, or my father would say, "Oh, I have to go across the street to get a record." So a lot of the inventory was over there. And we would go in, and I would see all the old Victrolas and records, but they were just paying rent on the bill. I don't know if they owned it. Grandpa purchased this property and knocked it down. And you see the floor of next door. This was the same house as next door. So he knew it was going to be his business. So he wanted you to enter at street level or one step up, as opposed to the 5 steps to get to the living room floor So he excavated this, built it back up, and stole his half of the alley to make it a little larger, and moved in here. Upstairs was still a kitchen, dining room, living room, the bathroom, and two bedrooms were upstairs, and it was still set up like that. Now there's no trace of any apartment living or anything up there, but I remember my grandmother up there cooking all the time, and we would race up the stairs to see Grandma first, because she always had candy in the chair behind her. But and that remained a bedroom until I was in my 20s, and now it's office space and storage rooms for liquor and dry goods like that. But he moved into this building, and the Depression came along. No one could afford an extra nickel or dime for a record, but he allowed the public to come in to hear the new releases anyway, because that was their thing. And if Grandmom had some soup or sandwiches made or something like that, people could partake. So with the ending of Prohibition, he bought a beer and wine license, and people could come in, and he would sit in the back. When I was a kid, there was still a turntable back there, and all the records lined the room. But we have, over 100,000 now. They don't fit there. And he would play the records during dinner. And then the rest, and just the customer singing, 79 we hired, so on and so forth. And it coincided with when we went into this building here.
Boy, you're such a good interviewer. You should have your own podcast. You should have your own show. You're so
I don't know.
really
We'll see one day.
wonderfully done. Anyway, so don't forget, there is a part 2 to your interview with Greg DiStefano. Don't forget, as a show, we are now everywhere. You can subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever major podcasts are available. So do subscribe so that you don't miss part 2 of Madalina's interview with Greg DiStefano. And a special thanks to the Victor Cafe and Greg himself for making this all possible. Thank you so much. And we can't wait for part 2 next time. So
See you there.
we'll see you then. For the Mada and Hugh Show, I'm Hugh.
And I'm Mada. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. And part 2 of the interview.
Next time.